Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Trish, and welcome to our webinar, How to Manage Difficult Employees. Thanks very much for joining us. Just letting you know that we will get started soon, so please sit tight and just wait. We're just going to wait a few moments for everyone to enter the session, if that's okay. Okay, it looks like we've probably got enough people who have joined us, so I think we can make a start. For those of you that missed the beginning, my name is Trish and welcome to our webinar, How to Manage Difficult Employees, and it's presented by the Citation Group. Before we deep dive into the presentation, I just want to cover off some general housekeeping rules. If you have any questions during the webinar, please just use the question and answer feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try and answer all of them at the end of the presentation. You don't need to wait till the end. You can type them in as we go throughout the webinar. Also, yes, this webinar is being recorded and you will be sent a recording of the link after the session. So today we'll be discussing difficult employees, how to manage them, what the risks are if you don't follow the right processes, or if you ignore the issues that you're facing. We have quite a few people joining us on today's webinar. So given the high attendance, I'm guessing that you've come along to our webinar because you've experienced firsthand the difficulties of employees or employee issues that can be experienced, or perhaps you just want to broaden your knowledge and be prepared for if and when you're faced with an employee issue. And I'm really glad that you've joined us today. And by the time you finish the webinar, you should walk away with some useful information that will help you on your people management journey. Hopefully, that's our aim today anyway. Today our webinar will be presented by Jess. Jess is an employment relations and safety consultant at Citation HR. She helps our clients via the HR advice line by providing them with guidance and support on a range of employment matters. So a little bit about me. My name is Trish. I am a business development manager at Citation HR. I work directly with businesses to help them uncover any gaps that they have around their HR and safety processes and find solutions that streamline their people management. Okay, so if you have attended one of our webinars in the past, here's a little information about the Citation Group. Citation Group has been around for over 30 years now, working to help Kiwi and Aussie businesses by providing complete workplace compliance solutions to help create better workplaces. From outsourced HR solutions and safety management systems to ISO certification, Citation Group can support your business. If you'd like to learn more about us, I would be pleased to talk to you after today's webinar so we can work together on a bespoke solution for you all. Today we're featuring Citation HR. So Citation HR is a complete, compliant and cost-effective solution that helps businesses keep on top of their HR obligations, streamline people management processes, and saves you endless hours and, of course, money. Whether you're a small business or a large enterprise, every company needs a solid HR partner that supports and provides reassurance. One of the beautiful things about Citation HR is that we can provide tailored HR solutions for your business, from the 24/7 advice line, where you can access our workplace consultants, plus our HR software and library of HR resources. So we have a range of solutions to suit your needs. Okay, that's all from me. I'd like to now hand over to Jess to discuss today's topic. And I hope you enjoy this webinar, and I will see you a little later on. Over to you, Jess.
Thanks, Trish, and thank you everyone for coming today. On today's agenda, we're going to highlight some underlying issues that may lead to poor performance. We're going to discuss how to undertake the performance management process as well as the disciplinary process and look at how they interrelate. We're going to look at what happens if you ignore performance or conduct issues. And there is time for questions and answers at the end, as Trish mentioned. But if you do have any questions throughout, please pop them into our Q&A section. Performance management and disciplinary processes are separate, however, they do interrelate at certain points. When looking just at performance, you'd be focusing on issues such as not performing to an acceptable standard, such as speed, competency, errors in their duties. You would typically manage this informally first by way of performance counselling, support, training, etc., before moving into a more formal process such as the performance improvement plan or PIP, which you'll see throughout the slides. This PIP allows you to discuss with the employee a review period, which would provide them the opportunity to meet reasonable targets. Failure to meet these targets may result in disciplinary action via the progressive warning system that you would have in place. When focusing just on the disciplinary process, you'll be looking at actions or misconduct such as failure to follow process, breach of employment agreement, or breach of company policy. Again, typically you'd want to start with something informal, a gentle reminder, or a letter of expectation to be provided prior to commencing a formal process. The formal process would be the disciplinary process in itself, and any further misconduct may lead to termination through the progressive warning system. Focusing just on performance management, performance issues can be due to many factors. It is important to firstly raise these issues with the employee and understand both parties' view on the matters. Both employee and employer will have different expectations of the role, different perspectives, and it is important to get on the same page and see if something can be resolved before going formal. For example, in the list under employee perspective, you could have an employee that has the lack of knowledge, lack of awareness, lack of capacity. There's might be conflict between two staff members that's making it hard to focus, personal issues outside of work, lack of motivation, lack of goals or priority measures or KPIs, etc. They may have not been onboarded correctly, and they may have access issues such as logins. So there's a whole list, and of course these lists are not exhaustive as to why the employee may be underperforming. From an employer perspective, you may be setting unrealistic expectations. There may be lack of supervision in the managers that you're trusting to manage your employees. There may be insignificant resources, pressure on leaders in itself, culture and value differences. Again, list is not exhaustive, and this is why it is advised to discuss with your employee informally before moving on to a formal process, just trying to find the root cause of the underperforming. Looking at performance management objectives, if your goal is to improve performance outcomes, identify training and development needs, improve performance, identify barriers to performance, facilitate a good employment relationship, or repair employment relations between the parties, then the performance management process, whether it be informal or formal, can help you reach these objectives. On this slide, we're going to be looking at commencement of performance management. As mentioned previously, your first step is to identify the root of the problem. Pinpointing the root cause is essential before implementing strategies to assist improvement. As a suggestion, I would look at categorizing the factors of the underperformance. This could be, the three categories are capability, which is skills, experience, knowledge, behavioral competency, such as communication skills. Capacity, which is availability, physical or psychological capacity or resources. Behavioral, which might be attitude, motivation, and confidence. Let's use an example of an employee. We've got an employee who works on the tills. If we look at these three categories, they might have lack in experience, they might have lack in resources, and they might have lack of confidence. So their lack of experience would fall under capability. If they have lack of resources, this might be a login detail. This would fall under capacity. If they have lack of confidence, they've got people laughing, the other employees laughing at them in the background because they're not unsure how to use the till. This might be behavioral. So you might not have all three, but categorizing what issues there are could benefit the way you manage moving forward. You also want to look at external factors that may be contributing to the underperformance. For example, personal circumstances at home, they might be struggling. Therefore, this is feeding into their performance at work. Overall, you do want to go in with an outcome in mind or an objective in mind as the employer, the manager. This could be performance counseling, informal, performance improvement plan, formal, or termination. Our job is to help you meet your objective with the lowest risk possible. Looking at the first possible solution would be performance counseling. As mentioned, this is informal. You do want to address the issues with the employee first, have a discussion. This can be through a counseling session, meeting, whatever you do want to call it. Having these meetings or discussions are an effective tool in achieving behavioral concerns, possible breaches of the company policy, working alongside the employee to foster improvement and learning, gives the employee the opportunity to discuss their reasoning and provide additional context, and also raises any barriers that might be there. When undergoing these discussions, please use a couple of these questions to prompt if you are struggling. For example, why did you X? From your perspective, what happened here? What prevented you from doing this? Were there others involved? Going back to that bullying situation of other staff laughing. You also want to determine whether the employee was at fault, or is it something us as the employers could have done to avoid this whole situation. Lack of resources, lack of training, lack of onboarding would be examples here. And you also want to determine whether the performance expectations were realistic in the first place. So asking a couple of those questions there. Moving on to the more formal approach of a performance improvement plan, or PIP. A PIP is a great tool to implement when a business wants to formally address and work towards improving the employee's performance and therefore conduct. There are a couple of things to consider before moving into a PIP, and this would be, are there actually performance issues that can be substantiated? Is there data? Is there dates? Is there previous reviews? Is it an actual task in their job description or their job requirements that you are looking at? Is the employee's manager committed to assisting the employee if you were to undergo this process? Does it appear that the employee has received proper training? Again, was there anything at fault our end that could have avoided this? And is there any known personal issue that may be affecting the employee's performance? So these are a few things to consider before jumping into a formal PIP. When making the decision or when commencing a PIP, you do want to include information on what is acceptable performance levels. So giving the employee a target of your expectation and also where they're currently standing. So identifying that gap. It needs to be specific and it needs to have measurable objectives that are achievable, reasonable. It needs to be relevant and time bound. You guys might know them as SMART goals. These are good to have within a PIP as well and help outline your objectives. Each review period in a PIP usually runs for 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on how long it would reasonably take to improve the specific issue. Bringing back the till example, this might not be seen as a complex task, so you'll be looking at the smaller side for review periods. You also want to include guidance on what management will do to assist the employee to reach these goals, resources, training, coaching, buddy system, whatever it might be that works for the workplace and the employee. You also want to include details on how often the manager and employee will check in. So within your formal review periods, you will need to keep in touch with your employee. whether it be once a week, whether it be once every 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, depending on how long your whole PIP is scheduled to be. Having these discussions will make sure the employee is on track and make sure you as the employer are providing everything you need to help the employee stay on track. And lastly, you want to clearly state the consequences for not meeting the objectives in this plan. Moving on to disciplinary process. A disciplinary process is generally used when it comes to misconduct, serious misconduct. In many cases, the outcome will be a warning of some sorts. Again, this should always be reflected in writing. In some cases, the employer may allege a breach of serious misconduct. The serious misconduct has significant risk to cause damage to other employees or to the business and involves breaches of policies and procedures. Typically, the employer needs to be able to assert that the employer has lost trust and confidence in the employee for it to be deemed serious misconduct. When starting or looking at a disciplinary process, again, there are two perspectives. You always need to consider the employee's perspective as the employee always needs to consider yours. When focusing in on the employee perspective, again, there may be lack of knowledge, awareness. They might not have the right skill, experience. There might be personal issues outside of work, lack of motivation, again, not onboarded correctly. So you'll see perspective is along the lines as our previous slide. Employer perspective, they may not have documented expectations in the contract or policies correctly or with enough detail. There might not be any evidence that the employee is aware of the policy that they're breaching. Again, unrealistic expectations, lack of supervision and training, insignificant resources, lack of leadership direction and instruction, pressure on leaders, culture and values. So both perspectives do need to be considered when moving into a disciplinary process, as it could help you get to your achieved outcome with keeping both parties happy and not necessarily needing to go formal. The disciplinary process in itself, the employer should determine what is the nature of the conduct, where's the breach, does it require the employer to undertake an in-depth investigation, do you have enough knowledge, do you have CCTV, therefore you don't need to investigate. It's very clear this person has undergone theft, whatever it might be. If you don't have enough information, you can't say, hey, balance of probability, you have breached, then you do need to investigate. Can the investigation be conducted with internal resources or is a third party needed? Inform the employee of the concerns and invite them to a disciplinary. Once you've done the investigation, once there are allegations in place, invite them to a disciplinary meeting. Conduct the meeting, consider their responses, and then finalize the outcome in writing. Throughout this process, record everything you do and make sure the employee has the support they need throughout if they do request it. I'm going to pass back to Trish for the next slide.
Thanks, Jess. What a fantastic presentation so far. Okay, so if you're starting to think about some of these issues in your own business, or perhaps you have an existing workplace matter you need some support with, here's a special offer for you. Today, we're offering everyone here a complimentary consultation call. This is the perfect opportunity to discuss your business compliance, understand if you have any glaring risks, and we can share our knowledge with you. We'd love to be able to assist you. So simply scan the QR code on the screen, and if you're on a mobile device, you can click through the link in the chat box below. Plus, for today's offer, we have a special $200 e-card, Prezi card for one lucky winner. So to go into the draw for that, simply book in a workplace compliance consultation call. And I'll give you just a minute to complete the form, and then we'll get back to the presentation. Hopefully most of you have done that now. Thanks, Jess. Over to you now.
Thanks, Trish. That sounds like an exciting offer. Let's jump back into the slides now and focus on what if performance doesn't improve. If an employee's performance doesn't improve after a reasonable period and you've engaged in a PIP, you may need to consider other options. Should the performance improvement plan continue if the employee has shown some slight improvement but has not yet met the full extent of the objectives, you may be able to extend the PIP. This will be beneficial for both parties and you can tailor it to suit the ongoing concerns. You can also assess the employee's engagement. Is the employee happy in their current role? Is there anything else or alternative roles you can move them to, add duties, remove duties, transfer to where they may be more satisfied, tying in that motivation piece and thus perform better. If the employee is unable to meet the reasonable objectives set out in the PIP, they will continue to receive formal warnings aligned with your progressive warning system. As a result, in the final disciplinary, they may be terminated. If they have reached that progressive warning system end, the next step is termination. What are the risks if you get it wrong? Having a performance discussion or conducting disciplinary meetings can be confronting, challenging, and even uncomfortable. Both parties will feel this way. It is important for managers to be well versed in how to conduct a process and how to de-escalate upset employees to avoid potential claims moving forward. In New Zealand, most individuals running through the processes will be directors or owners of a business. You are already juggling multiple duties, therefore it can be quite complex and difficult on you. Flip side, larger businesses may have a role specific for this. No matter your role, these processes are delicate, and if you do engage with us as clients, we will support you as much as we can. You need to remain impartial and ensure fairness to all concerned. You need to ensure that any relevant law is being observed and you're not placing yourself at risk personally. Reasonable management action undertaken in reasonable manner should not increase the employer's risk. However, if the process is not undertaken correctly, it can lead to claims as seen on this slide. The most common claims from the previous slide are unjustified disadvantage or unjustified dismissal. These may result from procedural deficiencies during and at the end of employment, such as not raising concerns correctly with the employee, not allowing the representation, whether it be through disciplinary, performance, or in a discussion they request representation for, using performance management to target other issues, i.e. declining extra hours or on call, flawed management of the process, poor analysis of the core issues prior to performance management. That's tying in why the discussion prior to is important. Having those discussions, having those counselings is needed in order to minimize risk. There might be underlying issues that may lead to poor performance. Again, if these are highlighted before, you may not meet the dismissal at the end and therefore have these claims. There may be a fault in the process and of course dismissing the employee for incorrect reasoning. So when it comes to incorrect reasoning, you've got performance and disciplinary. They are separate. They do interrelate, but they are separate. Performance solely focuses on the duties, normally in their job description, the duties of their role, what they're expected to do. Disciplinary is more misconduct. Behavioral misconduct is also one. Most commonly, employers find it difficult to determine if there is a behavioral issue. Do we go down performance or do we go down misconduct, which is a disciplinary? Again, dismissing an employee for incorrect reasoning is a risk. So therefore, I would get advice around which pathway is best depending on the behavioral issue. Cool. This slide here is just outlining stats that were created for the year 2022 from NBIE. They haven't created their 2023 stats yet, so we're just using 2022. Basically, there was 1,970 claims. Of those, only 689 were released from the authority. This is less than half of the claims raised to the authority were not taken publicly. This is due to them being dismissed or potentially resolved in mediation. Again, from here, the highest penalty an employer in 2002 got was this figure here, 230,000. The highest compensation, the lowest being 500, but the highest one was 5,000, which is a huge amount for some small businesses. 17% were challenged at the employment court, so it got raised past the authority and to the court. And then 24 permanent and temporary reinstatements were done. So 24 staff members, after they had achieved their claim, got reinstated back into the workforce, into the business that they left, whether it be temporarily or permanently. The personal grievance process in itself, there are a few guidelines. When it comes to sexual harassment related claims, an employee will have 12 months after the grievance or awareness of the grievance occurred to raise this. This has just changed, which you may be aware of in New Zealand law. Otherwise, everything else is 90 days. From there, the parties will try to resolve internally, whether it be through an internal conversation, record of settlement, or through employment mediation. And then from there, if the matter is not resolved, that's when it gets raised to the Employment Relations Authority. If it's not resolved there, to the courts, Court of Appeal, and then settlement agreements at the end. No matter where you are in the process, a settlement agreement is needed to then end this claim and to finalize the claim on record. There are many different outcomes that could occur depending on the claim that the employee raises. And again, you don't necessarily have to do something wrong for the employee to raise something. So that is the potential downfall as the employer in our system, but also a protection for the employees within our system. Potential outcomes could be compensation for hurt and humiliation if they do claim that, lost wages, hearing fees, legal fees. You might be paying for the employee's legal fees if they win. That's usually starting at 3,500 plus GST. And penalties in themselves, if you're breached the wage and time records, holiday and leave records, breach of contract, breach of good faith, you as a business may be up for a penalty. These amounts do range. You might be looking at reinstatement. As mentioned before, the employee might be directed from the authority, from court, to enter back into the workplace, and you can't kind of argue against that at that stage. Compliance, interest, and public determination. So basically, if you do end up in the authority, your case will be seen by the public or could be seen by the public if researched. So this is why mediation, the step before, is advised where possible, because then you avoid being in the public eye and risk to reputation is lowered. Tips and tricks. Formal documentation is crucial, starting from kind of day one of the issue all the way through to the outcome. You want to record. You want to record when you went into the factory and spoke to Susan, for example, or when you pulled this person aside and just said, oh, this is how you wear gloves correctly, for example. So you do want to note down every discussion you do have or reminder with the employee with dates attached, can be in a journal, can be on their employee file, wherever is most suited for business management. You need detailed evidence of the lawful objective reasonings. You need to ensure you have you don't have an uncompromised or impartial decision maker. So if the employee has claimed their manager's bullying, you're not going to put the manager in charge of that process, for example. Ensure your contracts and policies include express provisions around misconduct and serious misconduct. If you haven't had this reviewed, I would suggest you get your parts of your contract relating to this reviewed. Ensure your contracts have clear role requirements. So basically, if you are undergoing a performance improvement plan and their role requirements aren't clear or their job description is not clear, you don't have anything to point to. So getting those parts right prior to employment or updating them at the start of employment as they go is crucial in order to manage formally later on. You want to design and implement clear policies and procedures as a whole in relation to bullying, harassment, equal opportunity, and the handling of personal grievances. Please do seek advice before making any firm decisions, and be measured. So be aware of the risks, try to mitigate the risks, and don't rush into anything. Here are some of my final tips and tricks before I pass on to Trish and answer all of the questions that have been coming through. Again, if you have any questions pop up, please put them in the box now as we're heading there shortly. When dealing with difficult employees through these processes, it's important to approach the situation from a positive angle. For example, are there any barriers preventing you from improving in X areas that you would like to discuss further? Allowing the opportunity to have this discussion, be on the same page, and be positive about it towards the employee. You want to avoid any absolutes, such as the fact of the matter is, as it's showing you're not willing to consider other views or their views. You want to invite other opinions or views within these discussions, and this is a positive and healthy approach and acts in good faith. Ensuring mental well-being is cared for, especially during a formal process, as well as the rest of employment. All right, thank you everyone for listening to me through these slides. I'm going to pass back to Trish now so we can answer all of those questions that have come through.
Okay, thank you again, Jess. That was fabulous. I certainly learned something. If you'd like to discuss a workplace issue in detail, or perhaps your business is looking to streamline its compliance practices, we'd love to be able to assist you. And we are offering you, everyone on today's webinar, a complimentary consultation call, again, as a reminder. If you're on a mobile, again, click through to that link. We'd love to meet with you. A minute just to scan that QR code, and then we'll move on to the questions and we'll answer those for you. That should be interesting. Okay, your questions answered. So we've been inundated with questions and we only have time to answer a few today, unfortunately. If we don't answer your question today, we'd be more than happy to talk to you offline and we'll be able to be in touch with you after the webinar. So question number 1 for you, Jess. Why do I have to run a disciplinary process through performance review? Always a good question. Lots of people ask us. Over to you, Jess, to answer that one.
Thanks, Trish. That's a really good question. My advice would be to always follow the process outlined in your contracts or policies regarding your progressive warning system. This might be a verbal warning, first written warning, final warning, termination, or you've got first written, second written, third termination, whatever it might be. That is your progressive warning system within your agreement with the employee. So why do you have to run a disciplinary process through a performance management process? The reason being is that that is what is written in your agreements to get to a warning. So therefore, you must follow a disciplinary process to get through a progressive warning system. Hopefully that does answer your question, but if it does not, or any questions did arise from this, please get in touch with us.
Thank you, Jess, for that. We're on to question number 2. I'm having multiple issues with an employee. Yeah, I've heard that before. Can I take them through the disciplinary process as well as other processes at the same time? Jess, thoughts on that?
Yes, you can, bearing in mind stress levels of all those involved. You should consider other factors where possible. If you're thinking of going through multiple processes at one time, please contact our consultants for support and advice.
Thank you, Jess, for that. Question number 3. Do I need to record anything when going through a disciplinary process? Also a great question. Jess, thoughts on this one?
Yes, it is always best practice to record or document throughout the process. Main purpose of this is if there is a claim, you already have evidence you can use to defend this claim. So when you are recording or documenting, nothing is too small. If there's a passing comment, if there is an email that you noticed, or if you notice 2 employees doing something, whatever it might be, record it down, whether it be written in a journal, a manager's journal, whether it be an email to yourself, whether it be on the employee's file. Please note it down, the date, the time, any kind of evidence, data that you may have as well. You never know what little issues could turn into big issues down the track. So no issue is too small when it comes to recording.
Thank you again, Jess, for those answers. And we have time for only one more, unfortunately. And question number 4 is, when managing an employee, do I need to use the same manager through the whole process? Jess.
Oh, good question. No. However, you do want to ensure consistency, which is why the record keeping can also give benefit to the business. Having the same person conduct the whole process is more efficient in the end. There might not be any need for handover, any time in between meetings, because the one person knows kind of the previous day, whatever it might be. So the answer is no. However, the business would need to look at the benefits and the faults if they do change someone throughout the process.
Right, thank you for that, Jess. Again, you are full of a wealth of knowledge and fantastic content for our webinar today. I'm really hoping you've all learned a lot today, as have I. Thank you for those questions. We're just going to wrap up. Just a reminder about our giveaway, which is a $200 e-card Prezi for one lucky person who is booking in a consultation call. And also just remember to look out for the recording that will be sent through to your email over the next few days. And get in touch with us if you'd like to discuss your workplace compliance processes or procedures. We love to help. From the Citation Group, thank you for attending today and look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks, Trish, and thank you everyone for coming.